What is up, guys? Teddy Cornwell here. Welcome to the Underdog Talk, the world's most underrated podcast. And there is just something about the underdog. But I mean, you see him, muscles out. Tim, I'm going to give you the muscles out today. Muscles out, absolute beast. I mean, this is a man who went from entertaining at corporate events to hosting award shows or I mean his work as a health and fitness speaker. I mean, you may have seen him at the Big O or on Primetime Muscle. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, the funny man himself, Mr. Tim Wilkins. What is up, sir? How you doing today, man?
Thanks for having me, man. This is a big honor. I see the names you have on here, and these are the kind of things when I get to be on a show with you guys, I say, wow, who's that guy? Like a lot of your listeners and a lot of the people that watch your podcast, I have a rule. If you're the coolest person in the room, you're probably in an uncool room.
That's right.
Ooh, it took me a while to get that, Tim. I don't know why it took me a while to get that, but you know what? You, sir, and sorry, Jonathan, but Tim is the coolest guy in this room. I've just gotta say it how it is. I mean, the funny man, the comedian. I mean, you are a jack of all trades, so do not undersell yourself. Now, Tim, before we even get into this podcast, man, what the hell was going on Primetime Muscle? I mean, when you guys are not live, you and Chris, what are you guys doing?
Breaking each other's balls incessantly. From the time we get up in the morning, Tarek's on the phone. If we say meet in the lobby at 8:30, Tarek's on the phone at 8:29 in the Uber screaming at Chris, Cormier, we're leaving without you. I don't know what you're doing. I don't know if you're kicking people out of your room, if you had a party all night. Chris like, man, I'm coming down. The elevator's slow. Give me a minute. It's just nonstop. That picture you saw, we have an amazing makeup artist. This top-notch operation Jake Wood's running. Jake Wood runs a class act. They built us a beautiful set. Makeup artist named Chanel, who does, anything from stars to weddings and everything in between, comes in and does our makeup. Well, Chanel knew she was going to be out, and she left us our colors and left us a way to do our own makeup and said, all right, guys, here's your stuff. And Tarek, of course, jumps in, grabs Chris's stuff and goes, I'll do it, bro. I go, oh, no. This is not going to end well. I've been in TV. I've been doing my own makeup. I've been doing other people's makeup off and on when they're in a pinch for 30 years. I walked by. It looked like he was painting a fence he didn't care about. Chris looked like it puts the lotion on the skin. Like at any moment, the entire thing was going to peel off. And he was so mad. And he finally looks, and I go, just get a wipe and take it all off, Chris. I'll fix it. And then Tarek walks by and goes, redo mine. So there I am, the makeup artist for the day.
I mean, Jonathan, we have some staff now on the Underdog podcast. I got to talk to the owner and manager of this podcast about getting, a beauty guy for me. I think I need it a little more than you guys. And just the thought of an elite bodybuilder putting makeup on. I mean, I kind of almost imagine myself just putting on makeup on Branch Warren and that man is I gotta stop before I get into it now.
It would take a lot of concealer to cover the veins in his forehead alone.
And I always say this on the podcast when Branch Warren was on, when we just started a year ago. I mean, I thought he was honestly the scariest man in the world, but the dude is the most humble, like hardworking, and I actually made him smile too. So that's something that's going down in my baby books.
That's awesome.
I know, it was awesome. Thank you, Tim. Now, obviously, you are one of the main members of Primetime Muscle. What has the experience been like, obviously? And then how did Primetime Muscle kind of start? Obviously, you talk about, the owner of the Mr. O, Jake Wood, kind of getting you guys together. But how did he pick you three individuals to be the hosts of this amazing show?
Well, I've been doing the podcast for the Olympia, or the pay-per-view for the Olympia for the last 5 years with Sean Ray. Last year, we had Phil Heath on a couple of the nights. And then we have various stars from their respective divisions pop in for bikini and classic and physique and men's physique. And they just knew that I have a big TV and broadcasting background, and I live the sport. I don't just watch. I'm emceeing probably 12 to 15 shows a year, and I'm still competing as a 50 plus. This year I move into the 55 men's physique category. So they know I love the sport, and I can hopefully keep the show together, the kind of caliber show they wanted. they came to me about a year and a half ago and said, we want to be kind of the ESPN of bodybuilding. Beautiful set, top anchors, and do this thing right. Bring, there's a lot of great podcasts. You have a great podcast. Nick Trigilli, Desktop, Fawad and the guys, Dennis, all those guys have great podcasts. But there's nobody kind of just laying it out there. There's a lot of opinion. There's a lot of great trash talk. And they just wanted us to come on with a judge, an IFBB pro judge that can give his professional insights, and a guy that's been there and done that for 30 years. Chris has been competing since he was like 18, 19. He's 55 this year. He knows everyone. He's got great perspective. And he can literally look at a bodybuilder where I go, oh, that guy's amazing. And Chris goes, yeah, his low back tie-ins suck. He needs to do more low rows. I go, that's why you're here, Chris.
That's why you're here. And, obviously great podcasts that you mentioned, and I always am thinking, I thought I was versatile bringing in these elite NFL players, NBA players, musicians, Olympians. And then I just look at what you're doing, man. I mean, it's almost like Monday to Friday live morning talk show, Studio 10. I don't know if that throws some throwback to you when you were on the CBS station in Tampa, Florida. Now, obviously you were the host there. Now, besides bodybuilding, what was the difference between Primetime Muscle and then, Studio 10 on CBS in Tampa, Florida?
Well, that was one of those Regis and Kathy Lee kind of morning talk shows that just that covered the whole gamut of current events. We had some stars, some local people coming in to talk about local stuff, a chef, home fashion things and beauty, typical morning talk show. And I kind of got that in a fun way. To back the whole thing up, I was on tour like 97, 98 with Larry the Cable Guy. And he was about to take off and with Foxworthy and the guys on the Blue Collar Comedy Tour. And I go, Larry, man, I'm not going to be with you much longer. What am I going to do for work when I leave you? And I said, let me hook up with your agent. She connected me with a buddy who that night needed an opening act for Earth, Wind, and Fire. So that was the next 2 nights later. So I fly back down to Florida, open for Earth, Wind, and Fire. They're super cool. I end up getting 4 more dates on that run and working with them for years. But that very first concert hall, their publicity agent called me like 9 years later and said, hey, the CBS station I do a lot of publicity with need the new host for their talk show. You should audition. And at the time I was on tour with Julio Iglesias, and I got the call in Vancouver when I was with Julio and ran in and told him I quit. And no mas is what I said. No mas. and no mas chistes, Julio. No, su comediante es finito. So then, yeah, I went down and did a Studio 10 for about 2.5 years and Monday through Friday, but I was still doing stand-up 4 nights a week and doing other still hosted bodybuilding shows on the weekends.
I feel like I also didn't want to creep you out with knowing, that Studio 10 kind of thing. But, here at the podcast, I think it's important that we do some, deep diving, man. I mean, that's how we know that we really love the guest, Tim. We did our deep diving on you, sir.
Now, Jonathan here, your new cohort, this is impressive. So I can just let you know what Teddy's doing. There are very few people that actually do any kind of research on guests anymore. Almost none. Absolutely. They think whatever they have to say and think is good enough to connect with a guest. They do no prep. Mad props to you, Teddy.
Oh, we're just getting started. And Jonathan, you've done your research too on our guest today.
Absolutely. And like we're talking about, we've done our research on you, sir. And, you went from comedian, TV host, NPC, commentating for the Olympia, and a nutrition author. That's just insane. Is there anything that you can't do, sir?
Well, I was going to say keep a marriage together, but number 3 worked out just fine. She's awesome. It just comes down to finding something you really love to do, something you're passionate about, and making a career out of it. I've wanted to be a comedian since I was 6 years old. I started loving bodybuilding at 16. My best friend and I would sneak down to Venice Beach, get a day pass. We'd watch the guys on Muscle Beach. Then we'd get a day pass and go inside to Gold's, watch Anja Longer and Hanny Van Aken and all the people that were training in there, and just loved it. From the Barbarian Brothers, we used to train with those guys as teenagers, and we just we just loved being around it. I couldn't wait to 15, 18 years later to be in the sport at this level.
Oh, man.
That's just incredible.
It's a new connection between me and Jonathan. Jonathan, go.
Do what?
Tim, this is our second podcast together.
Dude,
we're getting the flow together. We're feeling it out. Now, this is deep diving, and I actually don't know if my deep diving led me to like a fake website. Is it true? Obviously, you talked about the Earth, Wind, Fire. Is it true you've been the opening act for Aretha Franklin, Olivia Newton-John, Hall & Oates, Styx? I mean, I gotta ask, which act was the most surreal? And damn, man, you are killing it. But I don't even know if I knew Olivia Newton-John was on the same maybe state as me. I don't know if I could get up on stage. I'd be starstruck. How are you doing this?
She was adorable. My kids, who are now 24 and 29, the little one was about 4 or 5. They watched Grease for 5 days leading up to the show. And then the little one watched the concert and then passed out during the autograph signing thing. My big one, who's a total hound, is all dressed out in his leather jacket and his best shirt, making his way around the room. And when the last autograph seeker left, he attached himself to her leg. And she was so sweet. And she said, "Oh, he's adorable. Who is he?" And I said, "He's mine, Olivia. I'm sorry." She goes, No. Have you got any more?" And I said, "Yeah, I've got one more sleeping next door in the manager's office." And she goes, "Let's go and get her." So she picks her up, and my daughter wakes up from a dead sleep, opens one eye and goes, "Olivia Newton-John," and then puts her head on her shoulder, passes out. She was a love. She was such a sweet lady.
I don't know what's more impressive, your accent, which I picked up on, or the fact that your daughter wakes up, notices a star, acknowledges her, goes back to sleep. I mean,
back to sleep.
I respect that more than you could know.
Now, Tim, I got to ask you, how did hosting the Olympia even come about? Was it like right place at right time? Was it just always something that you wanted that you seen yourself doing? Did you just like stand out above the crowd? They looked to you, and that you just had that charisma and stage presence. They were like, "This is my guy."
No, pushed on it really hard. I forced the issue. That's a really cool story, actually. Like 98, it was actually 98. I drove about 11 hours to a concert with 2 guys named John Boy and Billy in North Carolina. And then I got about an hour's sleep and then drove from there to the Arnold Classic. And I was going to sleep on my buddy's floor, who was part of one of those stunt teams. And he had 2 tickets in row double Z for me to go see the Arnold. And I just wanted to be around it. But I was going to go to the expo and hand out brochures and business cards saying, "Hire me for anything, to work in your booth, to do anything." Well, I'd been there like an hour. I had breakfast. I took a shower. I got in the elevator. And this lady gets in this beautiful mink coat with 3 girls behind her in sweats that say Jantana down the side of them. And Jan loves this story because she loves the fact that she pretty much made my career in the IFBB. And I turned around and I said to her, "I guess you're Jantana." She said, "Well, how'd you guess that?" I said, "You're the only one not wearing your name. That's boss." And she saw me swinging my keys in the elevator. She said, "Oh, you have a car. Would you drive us to the Arnold?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." And on the way over, she said, "Do you have an expo pass?" I said, "No." "Well, where are my husband's? He doesn't need one. Everybody knows him." And she said, "Well, what are you doing at the show tonight? And why are you here?" I said, "Ma'am, I'm here to meet people, get work." Like what? I said, "To host a show, maybe MC." She said, "Oh, honey, I have a show you can host in Lynchburg, Virginia. It's called the Jantana Classic Masters Mr. Olympia. Maybe you could host that." And then she asked me if I had back tickets for the show. And she said, "Oh, use my husband's. He doesn't go. She's been coming here for years." I didn't go to the show because I walked her backstage to talk to Arnold Maria and held her coat. And 4 months later, I'm emceeing her show. And at her show, my first time emceeing anything, it was a mix of NPC, IFBB. I had judges come up to her promoters and say, "Hey, man, I got a show. I always need an MC." So I got about 3 to 5 gigs out of that. And within about a year and a half, I reached out to Wayne D'Amelia, who was in charge of the IFBB at the time and the Olympia. And he said, "You know what? We're ready to change things up. Let's have you as the onstage MC." So I was the onstage MC before Chickarillo in 2000 to about 2003.
I actually did not even know that you were on stage doing Bob's job. And I think it goes to show that there is something about the underdog, that mindset. You are the hungriest, and there's nothing going to stand in your way. And I think anyone who is out there who wants something, as they say, the sky's the limit, Tim. I think I mean it. I mean, I don't want to toot this podcast horn, but I didn't see a year ago we having Olympians, NFL athletes just being here. But it's because hard work does pay off. And obviously it paid off for you, Tim. Is, I was astounded by your stage presence when I was watching the pay-per-view this year at the 2022 Mr. Olympia. Man, you can command a room, and that is not something that many people can do.
Thank you. I was sick as a dog too, which nobody knew until I walked off night 2. I said, "That's it." Took off my headset. I said, "I'm good. I'm going to bed."
That's why Chris Cormier canceled the first time, because he was sick, and then someone else canceled, and then everyone got some mysterious Olympia virus. I don't know what they were putting in the pre-workouts, proteins. It was going around, right? Am I wrong here, Tim? Like, there was something going around.
I am not at liberty to give it a name. Like, I can't say under contract Olympia virus, but I think there was a whole lot of bro hugs that weekend at the expo, and it just passed like little kids in a jumpy pit with those little balls. It's just conjunctivitis and stuff coming out of their heads. It was just, by the end of the week, everybody who competed or didn't compete got sick.
And now let me ask you this. Obviously, you're bigger than most of those guys on stage, but you didn't compete this year. Now, I've talked to a few guys who were there, Derek Lunsford, all these guys, and, they had the meet and greet Saturday, the finals that night. Now, do you think this is kind of a detriment, or do you think this is something that just needs to be done? Because we were even talking about moving it to Sunday after the event. I mean, do you think that's something that needs to be done, or what are your thoughts on that, Tim?
I think, this is it. Social media and YouTube and everything's given people more of a connection to their favorite bodybuilders and athletes. And I got to say, when it's like when we say on Primetime Muscle, when I say bodybuilders, I mean bikini all the way to open, wellness, physique. Everybody who lifts a weight to get on stage is a bodybuilder. And there's too much trash talk about that. Oh, he doesn't have calves. He's not a bodybuilder. Brother, if they had a category with pants that covered your legs all the way to the floor, that's the one I would compete in. But I think it's nice to have that connection with all these videos and messages and stuff. But to be able to meet your favorite person, maybe that somebody that's inspired you so much, somebody that you idolize, that you look at the way they've crafted their life. Like my middle daughter competed last year for the first time, and there's people she follows because they have kids and balance. And she says, all right, she's in the kind of shape, and look, she's at her kids' softball game. And I look like a Brandon Curry who's posting just as many videos of his sons playing flag football as he is him bodybuilding. So there's a whole lot of ways that people connect with their favorite people, but to be able to go to the expo, get a picture, shake a hand, and have that experience, it's just too crucial to the sport.
I agree. And now, speaking of two social media stars, obviously you and the team were hosting two legends in Ramon Dino and C-Bum. First of all, how did you get those two gentlemen in the same room? And what was that all like?
Okay. I get this question a lot recently because that was probably in my 32, 33 years in entertainment, the most viral thing I've ever been in contact with. Kudos to Jake Wood and kudos to Tarek El-Gindi for coming up with the idea and saying, hey, I want these guys to battle, to be with each other, to, be near each other and have that. There was no discomfort. Chris is one of the nicest guys. He's Canadian nice. So it's like, Minnesota nice plus. And Ramon is so humble because of where he comes from. He's the hardest worker. He's willing to learn. Chris was showing him some things. Cormier was showing him things. Bumstead was showing him things. And then right in the middle, they just kind of went at it and just lifted. And they had that bro thing like you do with your workout partner anyway, where they'll just look at each other, move the pin down. And you hear Ramon Dino counting in Portuguese, and then you hear Chris Bumstead going, I think that was 12. That means I have to do 13. So there was still that little bit of fun, but they were really cool to each other, and there was no animosity. It was just a lot of appreciation.
And I mean, champions on and champions off. I mean, I think from what we've heard about these gentlemen, I mean, the humbleness has been one word that rings out about both of these guys. And I mean, I can't think of two better guys to represent that class. Obviously, there's some other great guys, but I mean, those guys are in the spotlight and they deliver every time. Now, Tim, you've kind of seen it all in different specters of life, from the comedy, from, bodybuilding to being the opening act for Olivia Newton-John. I mean, how cool is that Underdog? I mean, that just, oh man, now I'm thinking about Olivia Newton-John. But what is your biggest tip for success in life after everything you've seen, sir?
It's funny. I've actually just been asked to do a commencement address at the high school in about 6 weeks. That's on the bucket list, so I can check that one off. But I've been thinking about this stuff a lot, and I was either too dumb to know I couldn't or too smart to know that I could. I just kind of pointed myself in a direction. I always wanted to be prepared when the opportunity came up. I didn't want to oversell myself, but I just put myself out. And whether I got crushed 1,000 times, make friends and be good to people, not because you should, but because it's just decent. And guys like Dan Solomon, Dan and I have been friends, 15, 20 years. One of the nicest guys.
Yep.
But I didn't just bond with Dan because I thought, I wonder where Dan's career is going to take him. I should hitch my wagon. Dan's just such a cool guy that we just grew together. And he's been so cool about, like, the Bigger movie. He just reached out and said, I need you and Ciccarello for Bigger. And I was so honored and so humbled. And we just had a blast. Chick is funny beyond funny. I don't think he shows people how funny he is. Sergio was cool to be with on that movie. And Callum, we had a very, I'm somber about Callum right now, hoping he gets his life together. But we had the greatest moment with all 4 or 5 of us in the van with Callum, who had been working with a voice coach for like 6 months to try to get Arnold's voice. And he turns around, he's in the front seat. We're all in the back. It's an iconic picture that somebody took from like the driver's seat or something. And Callum goes, mate, I just can't get this voice. It's not working. I've worked with this lady for 6 months. Arnold is just he's an enigma, mate. And all 4 of us in the back going, it's easy. Just do this now. Do it now. And we're all cracking up because all of us just turn into a cartoon of Arnold. And everyone had it in their own way. And Callum goes, you don't think I got it? I think it's better. We're just crying. But making these friendships, and I've got a friend in comedy who's been one of my best friends and mentors for like 30 years. But he's the kind of guy, there's that old adage, if you want to take the island, burn the boats. He has burned every boat and every island behind him and just never looks back. And I've always said, you know what? I'm going to make a friend because I like making friends. And I get a call from that friend every time saying, hey, they fired me at my other job. I'm going to hire you for this one. So it's just been a kind of a cool series of things. Put yourself out there, be a good person. It'll all come around.
And put yourself out there. I mean, as we see you taking the chance to show up, and I don't know if it was fate or just you having some big balls to be at that right place at the right time. And I always talk Underdog Talk, right place, right time, make friends, connections. And I've got to answer this because everyone asks, how the hell is such a small podcast getting these A-list celebrities? Because I get one person, then I get another person. You build it, and they talk. It's a cycle. Be yourself, be kind, and I think Tim said it the best. Now, Tim, speaking of accents, you've been killing a lot, and Rich Gaspari was on the podcast, and he had the best Rocky accent I've ever heard, and I told him he had the best Rocky accent I've ever heard. I want to give you the chance. Again, if you feel comfortable to try and beat Rich Gaspari's Rocky.
Teddy, I've been doing this a long time. Gaspari probably does a good job. He's a decent guy, but he's a tomato. I don't know how he's doing it, but he's got a pretty good accent.
And ladies and gentlemen, just like that, we have a new winner of the Rocky impression. You see him, Mr. Tim Wilkins. Tim, why aren't you doing like voice acting?
I've been doing that for 30 years also, along with comedy, kind of hidden underneath. There's a lot of things I just can't say I did because they go, pretend that's that guy because he didn't show up. You did it. One of my favorite new ones, I don't know if I can hit it right now, But I watch a lot of those Machiavelli motivation things on my drive to the gym, and then during my warm up, I get all fired up and crazy. And I was watching Chris on the Chris Cormier on the Jay Cutler podcast.
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard me do that on the show a couple episodes ago, but I started doing Cutler. I mean, Chris is strong. He's crazy strong. He was one of the strongest guys around. I mean, he had a lot of flaws in his physique, but he was a big guy. He was a great guy, but it was generally just me and Ronnie. It was me and Ronnie.
That's nuts.
Jay Cutler, are you in my podcast right
It's
now?
one of my favorite new impressions. I walk around the house doing it to my wife. She goes, "Would you stop doing Jay Cutler, please?" I'm like, "You're just mad because you don't have the physique. You got flaws."
I mean, I don't know if I've ever been this speechless on my own podcast. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, you see him, the man of a million damn talents, Tim Wilkins. Now, Tim, before we go, the floor is yours. Where can we find that social media? What are you working on besides every million thing it seems like you're doing? The floor is yours, sir.
Gentlemen, I don't know. I'm kind of tapering off. I'm just doing the things I love doing right now. I'm not doing as much stand-up. I filmed that last special. It's called Password Protected. It's a dry bar comedy special. Flew out to Utah and filmed that. And it didn't get edited for months. And I'm going, what is taking so long? Well, they edited and did a release the week of the first lockdown for COVID. So it got a monumental amount of hits. I said, all right, that was the last thing on my comedy bucket list. I'm kind of out. I had a couple other cool events after that, but I'm spending a lot of time concentrating on bodybuilding, getting ready myself for the Masters Nationals in 24 to try and get my pro card and try and end my bodybuilding journey on the Masters Olympia stage. Signups for the Masters Olympia for this year are tapering off. But when I sat at dinner with Jake Wood and Steve Weinberger, and I just asked out of the blue, what's going on with the Masters Olympia? They both looked at each other and went, funny you should ask. And that just set my wheels spinning. I looked at Cormier. Chris said, I got you, man. You're good. We'll get this. So my password protected special, it's not password protected, it's called password protected, is pretty much it. I've got stuff on it's up a couple other sites where you can catch up with my comedy, but just the bodybuilding shows emceeing. I'm headed to Houston this weekend for the John Sherman show, the Houston Tournament of Champions, Lee Labrada again this year, and a bunch of other fun stuff. And of course, Primetime Muscle has been such a blast to work at that level of my favorite sport that I've been following since I was 16 years old. It's just such an honor.
And you know what? Speaking of the Masters, we had David Henry, the OG Giant Killer, was on the podcast yesterday. He said he's doing the Masters too. So this Masters might be.
Yes.
I'm pumped to see what's going. I don't know if I should. I mean, David Henry said it on the podcast. I guess he's doing it. I mean, he's a legend in the industry. So I think it's going to be a pretty competitive event. I'm excited to see what's going down with that. And to add on to this, first person to buy Tim Wilkins, big time comedian. Buy it. Send me a screenshot. I will send you an autograph from one of the legendary guests that we've had on the podcast. That was even more deep diving, sir. I saw your face on that.
That was my first CD. I was training this girl, and I ended up dating her. I go back, and her dad was a psycho Vietnam Marine who was a LAPD SWAT cop, and he's cleaning his weapon like only a SWAT cop would on our first date. And he goes, "So what do you do?" "I'm a comedian." He goes, "I've never heard of you. You're obviously not a big-time comedian." I went, "That's going to be the name of my first CD."
Big time. I love it, and wow, it took me another few seconds. Guys, first person to buy the OG, because this is the OG Tim Wilkins comedy special tour CD. Send me a screenshot. I mean, I'm going to be getting it because I think we all need some laughs in today's world. Underdog Talk. Tomorrow we have Samir Bannout. Next week we have Nick Walker, Amir Abdullah, Raiders starting running back. I mean, guys, check out Tim Wilkins stuff. And I don't know if Tim's too humble to say it. It is Tim Wilkins _live.
Yes.
Follow him. Because, Tim, I just followed you for your dog.
Wally. I had to lock him out. That's the OG underdog right there. That dude's a maniac.
The one in the St. Patrick Day's fit.
The kid's got a drinking problem. His name is Wally. He's a Boston Terrier. He's named after Mark Wahlberg. Hopefully, if Mark's watching this, he won't be pissed off at me. But I said, Wally, short for Wahlberg. He's from Boston, like Mark Wahlberg. So I was cracking up when I named him.
Mark Wahlberg, I know you're watching this, so
Yeah.
excuse Tim, naming Wally, not Mark. Guys, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on this video. And I mean, Tim, I just have to say one more time, an honor and privilege having you. You are funnier than I thought.
Nice. Thanks for having me. Teddy, you got Samir Banu and Nick Walker and former Raiders. I mean, it's an honor to be on the show. Thanks for having me.
And I mean, the honor is all ours. And, Tim, I just got to say one more time, thank you, because I don't think you're giving yourself enough credit. The reason we wanted you is because you have that underdog mentality and you are absolutely killing the game, my friend. So thank you one more time, guys. Tim Wilkins, Underdog, out.